Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Meet Me in Napa. It's your host, Jeremy Jackson, and I'm glad that you are here watching us again for another edition to bring you exciting content and wonderful people from Napa Valley. I have a special guest here today, Chris Gallegos, right? I had to ask him because I'm hard with the names, but he's from Napa, grew up in Napa, and it's exciting to talk to him. We've known each other for a little while, and he has a pretty unique story, and so I just thought it would be amazing for him to come down and just come down and talk to us and showcase, some wonderful things that he's doing, wonderful things that he has done, and just his journey to get here. How you doing today?
Good, man. How you doing? Thank you for having me, by the way. I appreciate it.
Thank you. So, man, let's just get straight to it. What's you're from Napa, grew up here. Like, what's your journey in the Valley?
Man, so definitely Napa native.
Uh-huh.
Technically born in Vallejo, the Kaiser, but you know how that is, right?
I'm a little closer too.
Oh.
Yeah.
So definitely, Napa native. Been here for, all schools, elementary, middle, high school. But it's been a journey, man. You know, I gotta say Napa's different. Definitely was not like this 20, 30 years ago. It's definitely evolved, and looks more like a city now than anything. But to say, not at least is I'm very excited on where Napa's at now, from being such a farming town and hills everywhere, dirt everywhere. I remember when I was a kid just riding bikes everywhere over these dirt mountains through what you see now are stores, right? So I will say I'm very excited where Napa's heading, man. It's a beautiful, beautiful town.
Yeah. Interesting enough, it's funny, when I was talking to someone prior to, they were just kind of the same story, we're not born here, but moved here. But he was here in the early 90s, and it's like everybody that I know who has been here for 25 plus years, everybody's like, it's changed, right? And that's why I feel like this podcast and just it's going to be so great, because this is really showcasing the change through storytelling. Maybe people weren't here. Maybe people never been here. So I want to showcase how much the area has grown just through storytelling of people's personal experiences, Yeah. So give me just one example. When you said it changed, what's one of the biggest changes you've seen?
Well, just look at the business aspect, right? Growing up here, it was more of a mom and pop shop town, right? You didn't really see a lot of the commercial things that kind of you see today, right? Like, for example, look at the hotels. Right, like maybe 80% of those didn't even exist.
Right.
You had a couple resorts here and there out in the skirts of Napa Valley, but it didn't really have a lot of that commercial feel like it does now.
Right.
It was really kind of cultivated by like a lot of mom and pop shops. So you had that kind of it's always like the like the experience when you go to those mom and pop diners, how that was like the best food.
Right.
That was on every corner.
I was in Italy, in Rome, and we went to where we were staying at this Airbnb. And so we were looking for a place to eat, and there was this little mom and pop restaurant, and we went there, and the food was amazing, right? It was so good. And so I know what you mean by that, because it's like it still has that mom and pop feel, but obviously a lot of the mom and pop is not, I don't know, I guess pushed out maybe, I don't know, or just that feel. So even I think that's a thing that's kind of going on in the city right now, is that people are feeling like big money, big corporations kind of taking over, and so there's always that battle of like the locals versus big money trying to come in, and there's that shift and divide happening. I know there's a bookstore, and I don't want to say publicly because she doesn't allow me to, but there's a big bookstore that's coming in, and some of the small mom and pop bookstores are like, hey, we've been doing this thing here for a while, and now, so there's kind of that divide. But some people feel like it's a wonderful thing, and some people don't like it, and I think that's always the thing with change, right? Some people are going to like it or not. But so you said one of the things you saw was, the hotels and different things. What else have you seen change in the Valley since you were a kid?
Well, just the traffic, right? I mean, there's so many more people now. Like before, there was no traffic.
Yeah.
You could get to point A to point B, and you're pretty good on time. You could be a last minute person and be on time.
Yeah.
Now you got to prep just to get across town.
Yeah.
And that just kind of goes to show you again what you were saying, right? It's like the development stage, right? It's developing so much that it's becoming more of not just a tourist attraction, which that's kind of always been here, right? But a lot of people are living here now. So the population's increased massively over time, which I'm kind of with you on that, I have a hard time, a lot of times dealing with new things, right? I know, remember me and you talked times about music. I listen to old music a lot, right? You know what I mean? Like, and so seeing this shift, it's kind of like that bittersweet thing, man, oh man, I remember this, but I can see how it could also be good for as far as like just growth, in general. And, but.
Yeah. I mean, life is always changing, always evolving. So, you gotta, sometimes you just got to get with it.
Adapt. You gotta adapt. Behind. That's the reality of it.
That's the truth. So, well, let's kind of teeter back because we're talking about a lot of change. So what was like in your childhood? Like I know you say you ride bikes, but what was it like for you? What were some things that you went through growing up?
Yeah. It was a good experience. I think those are the days when kids were kids, you know what I mean? And, I was always the kid outside, playing outside, running around with a group of friends. You probably know some of my group of friends, to this day. And it just felt good being a kid, and obviously there's no technology, right? So, walking, not being afraid to walk to elementary school in like 3rd grade,
right?
You know what I mean? And
yeah, me and my sister used to walk to school, and it's like, now that I think about it, like I was in kindergarten, like 1st grade, right? And my sister was like maybe 4th grade. It was like we're walking to school by ourselves, like that'd be almost child abuse today,
Exactly, right? That or some traffic's about to happen to get swooped up, right? So that's just kind of going back to that, and but I was always a very small guy. So, I'll be honest, through my younger days, I was always one getting picked on a lot, man. So I had a little tougher time when I was growing up, what I mean? I was a little guy, I actually in elementary school, I had one of my biggest accidents, as far as like an actual physical accident. I got hit by a car in elementary school, and I didn't even get to finish the last part of elementary school because I had to have reconstructive face surgery.
Oh, wow.
So there was actually a point when I was a kid where I didn't know what I was going to look like after they took off the whole face wrap, because I was like eating out of a straw and stuff like that.
Yeah. Wow. So, okay.
But that happens to being a kid, right? Going back to I was riding a bike,
right,
doing some crazy stuff, and
probably no helmet.
Exactly, right? Yeah, you definitely don't. Kids, we do not look at the repercussions of anything.
Yeah, we sure don't.
There's no fear. But and I think just being able to. I think what I'm super grateful for, though, and just kind of looking back at my younger days, is I'm grateful to be in an area like this as a kid, because, you got to really hone in on a lot of that really good family culture, that family environment, because everything was so knit together, like families, new families, you know what I mean?
Right.
Like that, even though I didn't have a lot of family, I was the kid at other people's houses, taking advantage of their family outings and stuff. But yeah, that's kind of how I kind of grew up, and I was one of those crazy kids, man.
How crazy?
Yeah, we were the ones fighting all the time behind the back.
How crazy do you want to tell the people you were?
I was pretty crazy.
Yeah.
My group of friends, we were the ones fighting behind the backstops at lunchtime in elementary school. Back then, you remember when gangs were big back then? You had the Ben Davis, the Cortezes on.
Everybody wanted to be on Crip or Blood.
Yes. I was always the quote-unquote Miklo because I was the white one, right? Remember that movie Blood and Blood Out?
Yeah.
I was Miklo. I could blend in with both. So,
man.
Crazy times as a kid, man. Crazy times.
Yeah.
Crazy times.
So you talked about you were the kid at other people's houses with sort of family dynamic. You don't have a lot of like cousins or like a lot of family out here, or?
Yeah, I mean, my family, to be frank here, is... One, my dad's an immigrant, right? So he came here by himself. I didn't
from where?
Spain.
From Spain.
I never met a person in his family.
Okay.
It was him, and he exited my life very young. But my mom's side was smaller too. But even as I got older, I mean, they all had passed away.
Okay.
Drugs.
Okay.
That was a family with that. She was the only one that didn't do that, but had all the medical problems. So just because everything was so small and eventually just was wiped out, I was that kid that was kind of always like, Christmas, go to the friend's house, Thanksgiving, go eat, over here, right? And just kind of take advantage of all the families that had things going on.
So, it's interesting. I was telling me and my wife and just discussing with people when they ask me, since I've been living out here, they're like, what's Napa like? And I say it's really community focused place. And I think by me only being here for the time I've been here, and it's still that way, it kind of a testament, because you're saying that now, that when you were a kid, it was like that, where families, and it still seems to be like that. I think there's probably a little bit of different dynamic to it, but it's still a very community centered place. And so, I mean, that's really a good thing, right? Because you really gotta, like they always say, it takes a village, and sometimes people don't have the same support system like, others have and everything. So, so you, kid fighting high school and different stuff. Like, did you like graduate? You go to college? What was your kind of young?
So we're getting deep now.
Yeah. What was your young teenage?
We'll open up Pandora's box here. Okay, I get it. Yeah. So,
well, I think it kind of, it feeds into where you're standing now, which we'll get into that.
Yeah.
But I think that journey needs to be kind of,
Yeah. And yes, and I think that's very important, because, that part of my journey was very hard. My high school days was a wreck. I didn't learn anything. I didn't do anything. I paid people to do my homework. Girlfriends at the time. I was a very angry child, put it that way.
Okay.
And I had a problem with, again, I kind of, what I was saying earlier, a lot of family dynamics, but a lot of trauma that I could not handle. So, I've been expelled before for headbutting a principal.
Yeah. I got a couple suspensions.
I
had a couple.
I've bounced around from continuation schools. So, my whole high school career was like pretty much based on, making money, not the legal way.
Yeah.
Being that guy, fighting, and just bounce from schools. So my school that I even graduated from, it was a continuation school that didn't exist anymore. But
you're a dinosaur, huh?
Yeah. I think that was the hardest parts of my life, though. It was my high school career, because at 1.2 I had dropped out.
Okay.
Because just I was opening it all up. That's a point my mom was at her worst. And so bad that I had to put her in a 5150.
Okay.
So I had nowhere to go.
Right.
So, that was the first
time. That was in high school?
High school.
Okay.
So that was the first time I was homeless.
Wow.
Because of that, I could not be at the apartment she was at. So I had got kicked out of the apartment.
Okay.
From the management place.
Right.
So I had dropped out of high school to work construction at 16 throughout the day, and then at night I work at Burger King, actually the one off Jefferson over here.
Wow.
And just to pay rent to live in someone's garage.
So I'm I'm thinking, when you're saying that, what was the mindset that I'm going to work? Like, why didn't you just, like a lot of kids in that situation, they would try to find maybe the I don't want to say you're freeloading, you're 16. So yeah, you know what I mean? It's not like you go provide, but what was the kind of mindset that you had that made you work and then like 2 jobs at 16 instead of just like maybe just staying on somebody's couch and just being lost, in that? Cause that's a difficult situation.
Yeah. And good question, by the way. I definitely can tell you one thing. I've always been a person that always wanted a lot. And because I grew up on welfare, again, my dad was a janitor when he came here. That's his biggest thing he ever done, was a janitor. And my mom was disabled when I was a kid. She never worked, at least when I was alive. So she was getting Social Security disability stuff, right? So, and then when he bounced, I mean, obviously there's nothing at that point. So I always have been, quote unquote, the hustler that knew that I wanted more.
Right.
Which kind of why I got into legal business at first.
Right.
I was good at that. Never get high on your own supply while I made money. And, I think that mentality just stayed with me at a young age. So then when that happened, being my back against the wall, I knew that I had to do something.
Right.
And I had to make money.
Well, I think also too, now that I'm thinking about it, the other part of that question is, why didn't you just get deeper in the streets? Because that usually would be the next level.
Yes.
Like now when it's just, there's no parental, there's no guidance. There's just like, this is all me. Like, did that even happen, or did you back off from that? Or how did that?
The fighting aspect did.
Okay.
So definitely was more angry. So I got a lot more physical fights.
Yeah.
But to be honest, I was never really like, I didn't have an addictive personality. So even when I was that kind of person, making money, I never was a person that got into, I was always about making the money. Mm-hmm. That's one thing that, rest in peace, Mom. That's one thing that I can say I got from her is that, seeing her have nothing and still always being able to figure out a way to provide was something that I think I had really cultivated and didn't realize it. You don't realize what happens subconsciously.
Yeah.
Right. So, and because Mom was so ill, I think that's what helped me not become like the drugs in the streets as far as like me doing, because I was so nervous about having illnesses like her and not being able to function properly and stuff. So that kind of scared me a lot.
Wow.
But I was just good at making money. So I was like, why don't you use this to make money?
Right.
And just don't be that person. So you're right. The big question would be like, well, what kept you out of the streets? It was the fear, right, of getting to that level. But I wasn't scared of the other level, which is like the jail, the fighting. I wasn't scared of that.
Death potentially.
I was more scared of just like, well, if I get deep into doing drugs and things like that, I see my mom not be able to get out of bed, hospitals run up in the house, take her out to ER constantly, and I didn't want to get these illnesses from drug overdose, stuff like that. So I was always scared of that kind of stuff to that degree.
Yeah.
Which kind of kept me out that way.
That's interesting. I just always perplexes me when how people interpret information and experiences, because there's the same person that says, I would have got deeper in the streets, or I started doing drugs because drugs was around, but it had the opposite effect, So that just always on a psychological level just kind of makes me wonder about how and why people are choosing in those crucial situations. I mean, I didn't experience anything like that growing up. So, but yeah, so you go along, you said you were homeless, you were working at 2 jobs. So what from that time to maybe early 20s, like, or when did things start to change for you? Like what started to change with the fighting, the anger, getting a grip on all that? Like what went on to help turn that around?
It took a long time. I didn't get over a lot of this.
Like you didn't just get into a fight last week, did you?
No. Too much to lose now. Too much to lose now. I still got it though. I still got it.
Oh, okay.
I still got it. I figured at that point you just learn the emotional intelligence as you get older.
Yeah, that's
right?
true. That's true. Yeah.
But it took me a long time, man. Because again, I think I was just things that I couldn't really grasp. Being lost, and I was always that kid because of not having things. I always felt like it was me against everybody. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Even if someone was my closest friend, I just always was just cautious.
Right.
So, after high school, it got kind of worse as far as like my whole attitude, with life. So that's when I started going to jail and, getting caught with pounds of marijuana in the truck, and because back then it wasn't legal.
Yeah,
and I had my Campus Cup card, so I was as legal as it could be, but not like that.
But not
though.
that. Yeah,
they're like, this is out of jurisdiction.
Not 5 pounds legal.
And one of my worst endeavors was, I think I was like 21, and then again, just still being an angry person, getting in this most crucial fight I've ever been in that was on the brinks of prison. But thank God, case somewhat got dismissed, and I served normal jail time.
Yeah,
not prison time, but it was that last time that I had went to jail for that one experience of that kind of altercation, which was, man, put it this way, it was bad to where a few people that were with us during the time that wasn't physical with us, but was there, said that they were having like nightmares, like because of how bad it was.
Wow.
But I got out and I realized that if I cared about my mom the way I would, tell myself I do X, Y, and Z, I felt like that I needed to change. And I knew that to be the son that she needed, because as she got older, she got worse and worse.
Right.
I needed to start stepping up. So I didn't really start trying to make a big change in my life until like mid-20s.
Okay.
Yeah. So, but yeah. That's...
So what did that change look like? So you got in a situation, you got spared basically, And so you knew you had to make the change. What did that look like for you? How did that start to begin? What did that change look like? What were the decisions you were making in that stage?
Yeah, so that's when fitness came along in my life.
Okay.
So I was not in fitness.
And you guys can't really see, but he got some guns under there. He got some guns under there, you know what I mean?
I gotta hide behind the coast. I don't scare nobody, you know what I mean? But so fitness came in my life.
Okay.
And honestly, that kind of saved me because it gave me purpose. Because then I started transcending into fitness and using my mom going home every day, seeing how ill she was, bedridden, to get me back to the gym every day. I would wake up and I started getting disciplined just by seeing her and not wanting to be this way. I didn't know it was genetic. Wow. I didn't know that if I could get any of these stuff down the road. So I'm like, while I'm making this mental shift, and this more disciplined lifestyle, it's like, well, why not, use this as fuel instead of fear now? Because remember earlier I said it was fear.
Yeah.
I was feared of being in that scenario, but now it turned into fuel. So
from fear to fuel, I like that.
Yeah, the 2 F's, right? And so it was one of the biggest blessings. That's why when people say, "Oh, man, would you take things back?" The jail stuff. I needed that because I probably wouldn't have got so deep into health, which correlated me, not only starting working out, but then I started getting into the career path.
Okay.
And that's how my career started with fitness.
Okay, so you got into the career path, like personal training and
yes, because I got so in tune to just, like anything, right? It's like once you're passionate about something, you start diving in. And I got, super dove into how the body changes and
you start seeing the results. And it's just it's intoxicating. That
I
dopamine.
Experimented. I'm not gonna lie. Mid-20s, I'm doing some injections. Pow. Getting a little big because I'm a small guy back then. Yeah. Still didn't grow height, but so I was like, if I ain't getting any taller, I might as well get bigger. But then that freaked me out because I had a scare of one day I was working out after a few injections, and mind you, back then it wasn't as trendy as things are now. So I felt like there was less knowledge,
or as professionally done.
Yes. There you go. That's a better word for it, right? So I had a buddy at the time. We were just going to his house every few days and just stabbing ourselves with all kinds of stuff. And I was in the gym one day and I was lifting. I just fainted.
Okay.
Boom. And I woke up. I know what happened. And the next thing you know, I'm driving and I kept almost passing. I was driving.
Oh, shoot.
And then I remember going to the house and laying on my bed and just like in these sweats. And I laid there and I passed out again. Well, my mom called 911. I woke up with all these things all over me. The hospital was there, and obviously at the time it was huge, so it was very recognizable.
Right.
They were like, "Whatever your son's doing,
you gotta stop."
Performance said he needs to stop because he was probably this close to having like a heart attack.
Wow.
I don't get levels checked back then. I was just like, I'm small, give it to me. I'm gonna be huge. And so then I went from more fitness to health, and then I started focusing on the health concept of fitness instead of just trying to get large.
You
know what I mean? Because
everybody thinks just big. Oh, you're in shape, but you're inside.
Nah. I'll tell you right now, most fitness people are not healthy.
Right.
I'll tell you that right now.
Okay.
You know what I mean? And that's just from me seeing people. There's only so much you can do. God makes your body a certain way for a reason, right? You distort it too much, it's not going to be healthy. But, younger person, you don't really kind of think of things like that. You're like, oh, well, this is my new identity.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That was
and the other side of that too, which you don't want to just gloss over. It's like the response that you're getting from looking like that, right?
Man.
That's
the addictive part.
I
look good. I feel good.
You look good. You feel good.
Women are coming.
Yeah, you got that. You got a few dollars in your pocket. You know what I mean? You're just like, and so it's like that could become, that's another dopamine of itself that you're fulfilling. You know 100%. What I mean? So that's a whole thing for a young man. So
that's another mental thing you're trying to get rid of, right? Because now it's like you're so addicted to this certain look, this new identity, this strength, right? I remember there was one time I got into a fight during that time at a bar, actually over here at the Green Door. And this is a true story.
Yeah.
There was some Hell's Angels guys there. And long story short, I get this crow hop, boom, and then get blindsided, and because like of all the stuff I was on, I was like, man, I'm like a superhero. I took that to the chin like nothing. I was like, this guy's in trouble. But again, addicted, right? So again, transitioned to more of the health concept and started taking my health a lot more serious as far as the fitness side of things. But yeah, man. And then kind of just leads up to how I got in my next career path and just kind of evolving over time. But going back, man, my mid-20s is really what really started shaping things a lot differently for myself.
Yeah. So I kind of wanted to intertwine that because we were talking about a little bit off mic. We were talking about mental health, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so what's interesting is that, you know, you had a lot of these challenges, and these kids today are probably more aware of mental health than we ever were. I didn't even, there was really only like two aspects. Either you were a normal kid or you were, I know they don't say the word, but we used to say retarded. You know what I mean? We used to say that.
Say
whatever.
I don't
know. Yeah, I don't know what I don't know what the new uncancelable word is today. But there was that, or you were just crazy, right? Kids have an issue. Oh, he's just crazy. You know, he fights it. He doesn't know how to control it. He just, you just get labeled these things.
Correct.
Whereas today, there's a lot more awareness. There's a lot more understanding of the challenges that people are going through. So, like, were you even focused on any type of mental health thing, or were you just like I'm just making these decisions on the fly just because you knew?
Yeah, this is a good topic, Jerry, because you know what? I think that, in my opinion, I think we had the best times for quote unquote mental health, because sometimes when you focus on things is when it happens more often. It's the law of manifestation. So because we didn't understand that was even a quote unquote disease,
right?
And we think maybe that's normality because of things we're going through, you know what I mean? We learn to tough things out. And, maybe to a certain degree, maybe the generation now might say that's not healthy.
Yeah.
To not be aware of that. But when I look back at my times, I think that was healthy for me to not identify it as mental health and identify it as God's blessings to make me a better person. Because there's a fine line with what mental health means, you know what I mean? And,
it is highly subjective because
exactly.
it's not concrete.
Exactly.
Yeah.
There's so many, it's gray area, right?
Yeah.
It's everywhere. But I guess we can speak on our own trauma, right? And stuff like that. So I think maybe me not being aware that the trauma was maybe a sort of mental illness, at the time, I think was better for me because this goes back to my mom, right? That was a lot of illnesses. Well, what do they do with illnesses? Prescribe. So maybe if I did think that and I got prescribed some, I wouldn't be who I was today. Maybe that medication would have wired me differently. Maybe would have had some. I saw my mom take multiple pills. I'm a firm believer part of her death was from all the medication she was taking. It's a business.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So, but at the end of the day, I think that might have saved me by just going it and rugging it out and learning from life experiences and having faith in God. Because that's one thing that, my mom did have is she had faith, and that's hard because when you're going through those things like that, I battled faith a little bit sometimes when I would go through certain things. I would wonder if this person exists and why me and why all these things. But, oh man, it was hard, bro. Like there was a lot of times where I contemplated certain things and, my existence, all the things when you're going through certain shit, you're like, why?
Were you, I hear you talk about faith in God a lot. Were you raised in church, or was it more so just like a spirituality thing, spiritual?
When I was super young, I was raised in a church.
Okay.
All the way until maybe late elementary school, early middle school.
Okay.
Then my parents split up when I was super young, when I was 7th grade.
Okay.
It was bad. I saw my mom pull a gun on my dad, so that ship sailed quick. So I seen a lot at a young age. It was crazy, right?
Yeah.
But we started that way, and I think just my mom just having so many problems that she kept the faith going because she needed it.
Right.
So I just kind of instilled the whole faith in spirituality at that point. But we grew up in a Pentecostal kind of church.
Okay. So that's interesting. I kind of like that too, what you talked about, because there's always this generational divide, right, between us and the young people, and it's like I tell my daughter all the time, she's in her mid-20s. I had her when I was 18, so I was young and wild too. You know what I mean? But no, I tell her all the time. I said I can't wait till they do a documentary on your generation, because everybody today wants to expose everything about ours or the past. Everything was worse, and now we're gonna do it better. And you're gonna find out 20 years from now that yeah, you guys, you're human beings too.
Yep.
You know, and you're gonna go through your trials and challenges too. But I feel like it's become like a crutch for a lot of people.
Yes.
To just diagnose, give a pill, do this, you know. And I'm not an anti-Western medicine. I'm not, I'm not that. I'm not preaching that. But I'm just saying, you know, I do think that there's like a crutch for a lot of kids to just think that you got to have their life is full of trouble. There's even an old, not to be too religious, but there's a Bible verse that says, man's days are short and full of trouble. There's an actual Bible verse that says that, and it's true. You know, our days are short in comparison to the whole history of time, and it's full of trouble. Even when we have good times, even when life is quote unquote good, there's always something there. You know, that's always going on, whether it be directly on us, our friends, our family, society, you know, just whatever it might be. So life is always going to present its challenges, and it does mean a lot to tough things through. Sometimes, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know,
sometimes you need help.
Yeah. So yeah, and we all need help.
Yeah.
Because that could be a crutch too, where you don't allow anyone to help you because you always. That's a whole nother problem, right? So yeah, it could go on the extremes. Yeah. Really quick. Yeah. So we talked about, you know, your getting. You said you went from just lifting weights and being strong to actually being healthy. So now you're being healthy, and you said it took you into your next career. So what was that transition? What happened?
Yeah. So, you know, obviously because I dove into fitness so much, I got into the actual business side of it. You know, I'm a person, kind of go back to what I said, you know, I'm a hustler. When I want to do something, I'm going to do it. You know what I mean? And I remember I got in the fitness industry, you know, the people that brought me in to get the job, I ended up being their boss at one point.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Because I grew up the corporate ladder, and what got me to transition was really my dreams, because as I started to really hone in on my skill sets and what I was actually knew I could accomplish, few things were a problem, right? What got me to transition to where I'm at today. One was, again, yes, being a big dreamer. I really always felt that I was meant for something big. I mean, maybe I was the one that was chosen to break the generational curse, right? You know, you have that family generational curse stuff, right? But again, going back to my mom, as she got more sick, I needed more time to be with her and take care of her because I was the only one. My brother got emancipated at an early age. I do have a biological brother. Okay. I have not seen him since I was 15. Okay. We keep it that way. It's better for his health if I don't see him. Yeah. Old Chris might come out. But you know, he got emancipated and took off. Okay. Which caused my mom to go into the deep end. But going back to the point here is that, you know, so I started making substantial money. I was making like 6-figure salary, running multiple facilities and gyms. But as my mom was getting sicker, I needed more time. And I started understanding if I can make these companies millions of dollars and I'm getting pennies to the fraction, maybe I should, you know, do what most people are scared to do and take a chance on myself, right? If you have those kind of skill sets, you got to go in and, you know, accept the challenge, right? Yeah. But the biggest thing was my mom, because I started having to need more days off to go take her to appointments, things like that, and now it's becoming a problem. So my thing was,
they're like, you're not making us money. We're paying you this money.
And I'm not too on the horn, but I was him in the gyms. Like, I would sell everybody. I could sell small ice, you know what I mean? I was selling training and giving to trainers and stuff. I would go to their facilities and do it all, you know? And so I was like, okay, I need to be there more for my mom. The only way I'm going to be able to do this is if I work for myself. I got to work for myself. I got to be able to manage my own money, when I want to, how much I want to make. I'm definitely not a firm believer of, you know, you're worth $30 an hour. You know, that's someone telling you you're worth. I think that's a good starting point to be able to get corporate America. I think everyone should always seek something bigger, because everyone has potential. It just takes a little time, right, to get in there. But so I was actually looking for some retirement vehicles, right, back then. This is 2011, right? And because I was making 6 figures, I was like, okay, my household don't have no money, so no one taught me principles, right? But I knew I need to save money. And obviously, you know, the 2008 thing happened just a few years before that, so I didn't trust the 401ks and all these different systems. I'm going to lose everything. And it's almost 3 years later, so I was like, yeah, I'm not going that route. So a good friend of mine, which is actually the CEO of my company and my business partner.
And I'm sorry to interrupt, but I just want to say this because for those who are watching or those who are young enough and don't know, the 2008 crash was a big deal. A lot of people lost their homes. There was just a lot of jobs lost. Yep. And the only people that got bailed out were the the uber rich, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And I mean, even a lot of them lost money too. Mm-hmm. So I don't want to make it but so just to give people an understanding for who weren't, if there's a younger audience who's watching, Correct. They understand that was like a really big deal.
Yeah, when that was happened. One of our biggest collapses we've seen in our country in years.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And so we've seen that, right? We've seen how it affected people. So, I got introduced to, actually the CEO who I work with right now, which is my business partner who I helped kind of build the company I'm working with now. And he introduced me to the finance world and things like that to help first just put away money. Mm-hmm. And then I was just so intrigued. I was like, where did you learn this stuff?
Yeah.
On how you can take advantage of this, that, I mean, you're with me in the business too, so how, the products I'm talking about. I was like, how does this all work?
Uh-huh.
Where'd you get this information? How come no one knows this stuff? I'm like, a lot of people in 2008 would have been a lot better off if they knew this stuff. And he goes, well, this is why I got in the business.
Uh-huh.
He goes, because, his sister had passed away out of nowhere with a brain aneurysm in her sleep.
Wow.
You know what I mean? And kids left nothing, so he just wanted to dive into finance and figure out, how could he help people in these circumstances. So I became a client. And it kind of goes back to that movie. I think it was Wolf of Wall Street when he's like, I'll quit my job if you show me a check. Remember that?
Oh, yeah.
I was going to say, wait, I was like, man, show me. He was talking about the business aspect. And I said, well, look, I'm comfortable
Show me
here.
the money, yeah.
Let's see what it looks like. So I started seeing some proof, and I'm like, okay,
mm-hmm.
I think I can do this. Mm-hmm. And he just, we started building a great relationship. He said, with your kind of skill sets, imagine, he goes, you like helping people.
What kind of business is this for the listeners?
This is a financial brokerage. So now I'm one of the vice presidents of a financial brokerage.
Okay.
So obviously we help with wealth management, all kinds of concepts, retirement plans, education, all these different things. But he asked me, he said something to me that really opened my eyes. He goes, you like helping people, don't you? Because he got to know me more. So he goes, you're in fitness. You like helping people, obviously get to their goals, X, Y, and Z. You take care of your mother, you help her out. He goes, have you ever thought of helping people with finance? Did you know that finance is one of the leading causes of divorces? He started pulling all these facts. Mm-hmm. And I was like, me being a novice, I didn't even know how bad that really was. And he was like, yeah, you know that it's one of our biggest problems in our country is financial stability. People just not having it. Imagine you helping people in such a bigger scenario now. Mm-hmm. And I was like, I like the idea, So I pondered on it for a little bit, you know what I mean? Talked to moms about it, always wanted her feedback, you know what I mean? Even though she didn't really do much in her life, just her feedback just always made me okay, regardless.
Yeah.
You know how it is. And then so she goes, she actually said something that I hold dear to my heart. She said, sometimes in life, people tell you, do what you're passionate about in every working day in your life. And she goes, son, that's not true. Sometimes you never know what you're passionate about until you dive into something and you become passionate about it. He goes, because, for example, I was passionate about fitness. Am I there?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, right.
Was it super lucrative? Absolutely not. It was livable. It wasn't the lifestyle that I wanted for myself, right? On a freedom standpoint, So I was like,
I like that. I always wrestle with that because, when you have kids and they grow up and they're giving you their ideas, they're like, oh, I got to find my passion. I was like, no, you need to go to work. You know what I mean? And I'm not against that. Like, take those opportunities and, go do something. Yeah, go do some stuff. But it's like people, back to like even the whole mental health thing, people will use that as a crutch to not do something.
Correct.
You know what I mean? So it's like, no, no. Go do something. Like I had to work in warehouses and did construction. Like I did some gritty grunt work to where it's like, I don't, I'm glad I do what I do now, and hopefully some sponsor pays me enough so I could just do this full time, right?
Yeah. You know what I mean?
No, but seriously, it's like that's the truth. Like you're not always gonna love everything, right?
But that's where success lies.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
right. Yeah, you gotta try.
Success lies on doing the things you don't love to do.
You gotta try shit.
You got it.
You gotta try shit.
And I'll just kind of go with some clients of mine. How many clients do I have that are teachers?
Mm-hmm.
That is a very passionate job. They're there because they love the kids, and we need those people.
Yeah.
Most of them are not in a financially good place.
Right.
They're way underpaid.
Right.
They're not super juiced when they see their paychecks.
Right.
They chase passion.
Mm-hmm.
And that's totally fine. And
right.
we love those people. We need those people. Thank God for those people.
Yeah, true.
You know what I mean? It's like
yeah.
firefighters, cops. I think they're highly underpaid, right?
Yeah.
I mean, they're risking their lives every day. They're after taxes and barely making under 6 figures after taxes.
Right.
And they're risking their lives. Passion. Right? And so sometimes can you get lucky, I think?
Yeah.
And find a passion that is super lucrative that can change the landscape of your family's family tree?
Right.
Maybe. Yeah, absolutely. I do believe in that. But a lot of times, like I never thought I'd be in finance, Jeremy.
Yeah.
I always thought I was going to be in fitness when I got there because I was shifting through the trauma, and I had such a deep connection with who was making me as a person. I thought I was going to own gyms one day and all this stuff. You know what I mean? I'm going to be the next 24-hour fitness. You know what I mean?
But really, the way you sound like you always were in finance mentally,
right?
You just weren't. That just wasn't what you were doing in your career.
Yes.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So it was like your dream for wanting more, right? You knew that I got to go get it. I got to access it. And once you found something, you were introduced to something that was like, wait, it's like I get way more return for what I'm putting out.
Correct.
That's I would say the same thing. Like I always, when I was a kid, I was always enamored with like Martin Luther King and Malcolm X and like just a lot of revolutionary speakers, but I grew up in church, right? I was at church every Sunday. My parents it was one of those churches where I was there at least twice a week. You know what I mean? Yep. Thank God it wasn't like one of those 5 days a week I was there, but I was there often. But I used to always see the preacher preaching, and I used to say, oh, one day I want to do that. But really, my passion really was just to be a public speaker. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I had to work through that process over years to figure that out on my own personal journey, which, I'll talk about that some other time. But so
You're doing a great job, buddy.
But that's the thing. It's like, people were like, oh, you look so natural. You do it. No, it's like, no, I'm doing my passion. When I sit here and I talk to people and I'm speaking, I'm passionate about this. So I can do this for free. I can do this for no money. I can do this. I do it at the barbershop, right? I do it all day. I'm talking, and some people, you're talking to more than others, but yeah, I could just do this, because that's what I'm passionate. But the point in that is that it took me, 40 plus years to get to this point because
and how many jobs, right?
And how many jobs and how many, right? And even the taking a chance on myself, because I could have taken a chance on myself before, but I wasn't the person I needed to be yet, at that time. Yeah. And that's important because a lot of times chasing your passion, you chase it prematurely. And so
the skills.
You don't have the skills. Yeah,
discipline,
exactly.
Absolutely.
So yeah, there's just a lot of things that come with that. So yeah, so you're talking about your you're in the financial. You said vice president of a financial
brokerage.
Okay, and now that you're there, I mean, obviously you worked up from a agent, I would assume.
Yeah,
you started off at the bottom.
You do your internship and you go and you start kind of getting through the associate phases and you kind of just climb your way through. And, me being, one of the first founding group of people that helped build it from the ground up, it allowed me to, really, it was, man, they call it the jungle phase, right? When you're trying to do a startup.
Startup.
Just hardest thing ever.
Yeah, it is.
If someone asked me, honestly, is entrepreneurship worth it when you have to start from the ground up like that? I would say it's not. If you can't predict the future and you don't know where it's going, I don't say it's not worth the headache, man. But obviously today, looking back, I mean, it was all worth it. But yeah, so even when I got in the business, like I was working for another company. We were in a group working for another financial company to learn the business. And then obviously the CEO that I'm with today, and one of my best friends is, eventually he wanted to open up his own brokerage to do his own thing, because he had a little more experience and he was already in it, you know what I mean? And he just took us, and then we opened up, Arkshire Financial, right? And what he did with us, and then we just grew over time. But yeah, you just kind of go through the rankings, right? Just like anything as you perform, you start getting promotions, things like that, right? And then, here I am. But man,
it's a journey.
That was a journey. That was a journey. Imagine sitting at Starbucks and Panera Breads all day long, trying to shake hands with kids' babies, like, hey, let me help you with your finance. Who are you?
Yeah, who are you?
Where's your office? Here, you want a sandwich?
Yeah, right. Yeah. Well, by the way, I just escaped prison a few years ago.
Yeah. And now I'm licensed to deal with your finances.
Take your money. Yeah. But people are fickle behind their money, though.
Yes.
Right. And I mean, there's always, especially today, there's always something about something you got to spend your money on, whether it's a subscription, whether it's a this or buy now, pay later. There's just
somewhere.
There's just so many things. And I was telling this to my wife one day. It was funny because we were traveling, and there was times where we were like, we budgeted for the travel, and then you see something, you're like, oh well, we'll take care of it when we get back. You lie to yourself, right?
Yep.
And you do, but it becomes a burden later.
Yes.
Right. But as soon as somebody comes with the opportunity to invest in with no like immediate return in that moment, but that will bring a return, all of a sudden we want to ask a million questions.
Yes.
Well, what's that? I don't trust it. It's a scam. Like we use all these words to talk ourselves out of those type of things. Right. So it's that mindset is really a trip. Like when you say about divorce with finances, because I can see it in marriages or couples, it's like one person might think one way about money, but the other person doesn't. And then one person might say, hey, there's all the financial information out in the world today, right? So if you invest, if you take $20 now at 18, it'll be 1.5 when you're 40, right? But who, you can't grasp that at 20, right? Yeah. And then most people at 40 still can't grasp it because they don't do it, or there's a fear that, well, what if the market crash? And meanwhile, people who are doing it are just excelling. And, but you're scared of the market crashing, but what if you lose your job?
Correct.
Right. So like, but we see that,
right?
We see that job as it's a security. Yeah. So kind of what you do, I know on the education side, and I've been to one of your classes before, and actually a couple of them, but I understand that thing, but I didn't always understand that, so that's a good thing that you teach that and stuff. So yeah, man. So now that you're successful in what you're doing, I assume, and I'm gonna tell you how I know he's successful. So we were at a friend's birthday dinner. And, we're sitting there eating. We're eating good. We're at this nice restaurant. What was that restaurant in San Francisco?
Sons and Daughters.
Yeah, that was a good place. Yeah. We was there for the homie's birthday, and you bring a gift, and my man's opened up the gift. It was a nice little Louis Vuitton scarf. I said, man, I got to get friends like that. You know what I mean? And it wasn't the one from Vietnam. It wasn't those. It was the, it was the real, the real deal. I looked, I was like, damn, I need some friends like that, man. So, you didn't have some Louis Vuitton friends, so but I don't want to gloss over the success part, right? Because it is successful. It is lucrative, but you took the chance and you won, I would assume, right? You won, you bet on yourself. And
yeah, I think that, this goes back to the spirituality, right? I think that, I truly believe that God really has everyone's on this planet for a particular reason. Mm-hmm. I think everyone has a special gift. Mm. Now I'm a lot more spiritual. It kind of goes back to when you look at St. Michael, why was he chosen to take out Lucifer? Gabriel, all these other people, why him? He was chosen to do it. His journey was different. So I truly felt that where I'm at today, this was my journey, was to create success and freedom to help other people understand it and to help other people create a pathway, and this is why, you kind of get those things, right? And I get all the hate DMs, man, all the time. Oh man, you're all about success now, yada yada yada. And you got to delete them. They always say if you don't have haters, you ain't doing nothing right.
I was hating in my head when I saw you on that boat. You posted that thing on the boat, on the ocean. I was like, man, look at this food. No, but that's inspirational. You know what I mean?
Correct.
Like, but even it's crazy how these conversations go, because even that plays back to why someone sees something or receives information and then processes it that way. Like for one person, they're like, man, that's dope. I want to find out what he's doing. Or I can't wait to do that. Yeah. Then somebody else is like bitter and like angry, right? So like, just, it's just an interesting thing, that,
envy and jealousy is the destruction of all success.
Mhm.
And when you see people, like, let's say, I'm flying on a private jet somewhere to meetings or whatever, and maybe someone like you is like, hey man, that's my friend, I'm proud of you. You know what, actually, I'm gonna tell you a real scenario. So I won't mention names because he's not here, but one of my best friends that you probably know, he's from Napa Valley. I don't live here anymore. I've known him my whole life. And we don't talk a lot, anymore. We do, but like we don't get to see. I guess I don't see him a lot.
Yeah.
Because he lives in a different city. He's got 3 kids now, beautiful family. But this is like I've known since I was 5 years old. Like one of the first people I'd stay the night at when I was a kid, right, at his house. And every time like I post things, just not too long ago, he had texted me, and he just said, hey man, I just want you to know that I love you. Every time I see your social media, you make me so grateful to know that you're one of my best friends and you're leading from the front.
Wow.
You know what I mean? Those are the people I will always take care of for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
If you ever need someone's kids, because that goes a long way for people like me that try to pave the way, because it's not easy.
Mm-hmm.
It's not easy leading.
Yeah.
People, communities, things like that, man. They may see my social media and see all the glam, but it is stressful. There are plenty of times where I get at home and I get teary-eyed. I'm like, dude, like, this is hard. Yeah. You know what I mean? The mental battles of just grinding it in and day out. But then you have the people that, like you said, it's like, why can't they process that way? It's because what I've identified is that those are the people that always wanted that, but don't want to put in the work. Mm-hmm. So they can't stand it. And I always tell people, everyone wants to be a millionaire. I don't care who you are, because money is a tool.
Yeah.
It's not about the money. It's the tool at hand that it does. It can provide better medical care.
Yeah.
It can provide for your family, loved ones, communities, right?
Education, all kind of,
Everyone wants to be one, but most people won't be willing to put in the work. So what does that mean? They like the thought of being a millionaire, but most people don't want to really be it.
Yeah.
Like the thought of it.
Yeah.
And so that's where the hate comes in. The people that hate, they like the thought of it, but know they'll never do what it takes, so they can't stand seeing it.
Yeah.
And it sucks in a way, right?
Or they can't stand seeing it to somebody in their close trajectory.
Mm-hmm.
So it's okay when it's far away.
Correct.
Yeah, like I don't know, then there's no
love
emotion.
the Kim K picture. Boom, $1.7 billion lady. Dude, if that was me,
right.
F him.
Yeah. There's no emotional attachment to it, right?
Correct.
So now it's like, oh man, I went to school with him, and oh yeah, he was this, and everybody wants to bring old stories out.
Yes.
Yeah, they see you on the, oh man, I knew him, he did this, and he's there. It's like, damn, we can't evolve. I can't get better.
Jay-Z said it the best. Big Dash, remember that? So I didn't do this all to stay the same.
It is true. It's true. So what's that? Muhammad Ali said, if you think the same way at 50 as you did at 20, you wasted 30 years of your life.
Absolutely.
So you got to think, and you got to change, you got to evolve, and you know what I've also found? It's interesting hearing your story, the connection of the motivation for the finances and health, right? It's been there really from the beginning, right? But it's like you always have been this person, even back then.
Kind of like a speaker.
Right. You always have been this person. But the evolving part is like you say, you have the emotional intelligence, you grow up, and there are some things now. That's one thing I love about my 40s, is that I'm so comfortable being me. I know
I'm
that.
Excited now. I turned 40 this year, so I'm excited.
I remember OG told me back, I had to be like, was I still in my 20s? Maybe late 20s, early 30s. And he said, I had to be in my 20s. He said, youngster, he said, you get to your 40s, it's going to be your best decade. And I swear, now I pray that 85 is where I want to go to, I feel like after 85, you just,
move
now when I get 85, I want to keep going. But if I get to 85, I'll be okay with life. Right. But I think like, it's really true. Like you just come into your own. And one of my favorite rappers today, Lil Russell, he has said this in the song. He was like talking about how he tried to be tough. He was like, it really wasn't me. Like sometimes we when you're young, you're trying to fit in, you're trying to be, and then they're like me. I didn't have all the anger issues and problems. Like when as I got older and I was able to assess some people's home life and different things, I was a regular old, square kid trying to be tough. You know what I mean? But you're trying to fit in and you want the acceptance, right? And so now I'm okay with being, just being me. You know what I mean? And it's a beautiful feeling. It's a beautiful place to be at, And it's kind of like when the older people you say, "I'll just keep on living," because it's like as you keep on living, you grow and you know these things, right? But there's still that common thread that's always kind of there, like about people.
Yeah.
Like, nah, he's always been that kind of guy. He just wasn't able to focus it into the right thing yet, And yeah, man, that's an amazing journey. So you did. I'm gonna pivot a little bit. You did speak about your mother no longer here. Yes. And just what was that situation like in your journey, and how did you even deal with that?
That was the worst day of my life. She was my everything. Till this day, I do what I do for her. Like I said, it was me and her forever. Like she had nobody but me. It's people take things for granted, man. You know what I mean? And when I see people with their parents still, and that's one thing that really irritates me now is when people are like mean to their parents. I'm like, knock it off, don't do this shit around me.
Yeah.
Excuse my French. But it was rough, man. That was the worst day of my life. For sure, a piece of me died. Denzel Washington said this, and it was the truest statement ever, and you really realize it when that person's gone. He said a man's first love is his mother.
It's true.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I'm assuming he's depending on the relationship you have with your mother, right? If
right.
you're very close to your mother, he goes, that is your first true love. And you'll never find a love like that again, no matter who you're with. And her being my best friend, my mother, I was always scared of that, man. That was my biggest fear of my whole life, was losing her, because I personally thought I was not going to be able to survive without her.
Yeah.
I used to always tell her that, and she would be on my lap crying, when I was at her house taking care of her, and she would be bawling about how much pain she's in. And I'm like, you gotta survive. Yeah. You gotta survive for me. I can't live in this world without you. Yeah. There's no way I'm gonna make it. She used to always tell me, you're my millionaire son, whatever, I know you're gonna be him, and she'd always say these things though that made me feel like that she was letting go a little bit, because I do believe she was hanging on until she felt like her spirit felt like that I was gonna be okay. You know what I mean? Because the way she passed away was she actually didn't even pass away from any illnesses she had. And but the hardest thing someone's gonna have to do is pull that plug, because that was my decision I had to make.
Wow.
When I walked in, I'll just make a long story short, I was at the office one day, and I had took her into a hernia surgery. She had all kinds of problems. She had this ileostomy bag and stuff, and all kinds of problems, but she needed her back refused because of all the falls she's taken, and the rod's bent. But they said, hey, I see a small hernia, but it's near the bag, so we need to take care of that first so it doesn't mess up with the flow of, the feces going in and out, change that stuff. So I said, he asked me my advice, I was like, yeah, let's take care of that first. And if it's a quick, because I've had 3 hernias, right? So in and out surgeries, right? Out same day. So I go drop her off, and I'm at the office doing work, and again, I'm waiting for the phone call. So I call Kaiser, and I'm like, "So Mom, okay?" It's during COVID, so this was the bad part. I couldn't go.
Yeah, you couldn't go in. Oh right? Wow. Well, they didn't allow even with the next of kin. I thought they allowed like.
Well, because it wasn't a death experience yet.
Okay.
So just to go see if she's okay.
Just to go see if she's okay. You couldn't. Yeah.
I don't want to go the whole aspect of the shot thing, because I don't have anything. That's another avenue. But so I couldn't go visit. Okay. So I had to wait until she was out fully, and I can go pick her up. So I called them like, oh hey, because of COVID, we had to push her surgery just till the end of the day. I'm like, oh God, thank God. I was getting worried. So okay, cool. Went to surgery. Oh, it's like 8 p.m. She probably won't get out till late. So why don't we do this? And why don't we just keep her overnight? She's gonna be groggy. It's gonna be like 12, 1 in the morning. Right. She got to wake the anesthesia. I said, fine, perfect. Just let her call me, please, because I won't be able to sleep if I don't hear from her. So I get this call from her like, midnight, just like, son, I'm okay. I'm just arriving. I'll see you tomorrow. I say, oh, great. I don't hear nothing. It's like 2:00 and I'm calling because I can't get a hold of nobody. Mm-hmm. And then about 5:00, I'm in an appointment. I see a missed call from Kaiser, but I'm in an appointment. So I'm just like, shoot, man. So missed the call back. And they're like, is this Chris Gallegos? I said, yes. And they're like, oh, I've been trying to get a hold of you. It's about your mom. I said, yeah, I'm trying to pick up my mom. Like,
yeah.
And he goes, well, we have a change of events. And I'm like, okay, is the surgery pushed back again? Like, what's going on? He goes, no, you need to get out here now. Your mom's dying. I was like, what? I'm like, from what? We don't know. She just woke up and took a turn for the worse. So I'm like, I dropped my phone. I could not, but my worst nightmare just happened. So I'm in Aston at the time, actually. So I had taken my Aston Martin. I'm going like 170 from Fairfield to Vacaville Kaiser. Yeah. I am flying. Cops got to come with me at this point, right? Yeah. I run up those stairs, bro. Like, I'm talking running. I asked the lady where the room is. She told me I was running scared. I didn't care. By the time I got there, she's already incubated, already unconscious and on life support.
Yeah.
And just like that. So, passed away on things. Actually, I was there Thanksgiving, and I decided to pull the plug on Black Friday because I didn't want to do it. I didn't want that to happen on Thanksgiving for me.
Yeah.
I mean, and then so, yeah, my life, I can tell you guys, man, like, to be so close to somebody and just not get to say the proper goodbye. That's why I'm so big on telling people you love them. You got to tell people you love them.
Yeah.
Your family, you got to tell them you love them.
Man.
It's not, even my friends, man. Everyone's like, oh, man, no homo. No, tell me you love them because there'll be a time where you may get a scenario. And you don't always want to be in fear either. You know what I mean? Like, that's the thing is, but it's also just have awareness, right? That these things happen. And when it's someone that's close to you, that's life-changing. Like, a piece of me died. I'll never be the same again, for a fact. I don't care. There's no therapist that's going to fix that part of me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that sucks. But that's God's journey for me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I still deal with it till today.
Yeah.
I still cry at least once a month, man, in the shower. You know what I mean? I got to let it out. You know what I mean? I still struggle with that, man. I'm not going to lie. That's one thing I have not mastered is that emotion to that trauma. That kind of trauma I've not grasped that yet.
Yeah. I can't even say I've had my grandparents. But it's interesting enough, like when your grandparents pass, it's almost like you understand it's the natural progression, right? It's not
because of age.
Yeah, it's because of age, right? And it hurt, it was painful, but it wasn't like I had a parent. I still have both my parents, and I haven't had anything or anyone that close. I've had some relatives or whatever, but it was the mom and dad aspect or parent aspect is a child or something like that. So I couldn't speak to that, but I could only imagine, what that feels. But I was also thinking too that sometimes there are things that you just won't get over in life, and I think that you have to be okay with that.
You have to be okay with it.
I think you have to be, I think you gotta learn to be okay with it. Like, have the grieving, but you can't let it, or you shouldn't let it take you completely out.
Correct. Because
if you believe that, God has a purpose or, a plan for your life, then if that's where he wanted to end it, he'd have stopped it right there too for you, so that faith aspect, it seems like, it's interesting, your story, because it seems like, maybe there wasn't a lot of great things according to the world that she's done, but she put everything into you.
She did.
You know what I mean?
100%.
Just like,
that was well said.
Yeah, everything into you, and like, because maybe that's all she had to give.
Correct.
You know what I mean? And you sitting here, and you're successful, and you're just and not just monetarily successful. You're mentally, making good decisions, doing things, positive things, and because you could have took that a different way. You could be sitting in the feds right now, and because you was
plenty of friends have been there,
balling out of control. But no, but I think that's beautiful, man, because there's a silver lining in everything.
Yeah,
and one of the things I love about doing this is as I talk to people, and just one-on-ones, not just on the podcast, but in the barbershop, as I talk to people, you just understand that everybody has journeys. Everybody has hardships, and they got things that they're going through, and it doesn't really sometimes matter geographically where you're living. You're going through some shit, you know what I mean? And it's like, it doesn't make it worse or better. You're a human being dealing with stuff, right? And so the illusion that everything is honky-dory just because you live in the valley or you're from it's not the case, you know what I mean? Like, and I understand that respectively there's challenges that are presented to different people geographically differently, but no matter what, I want this to be more of a thing where no matter what you're going through, good or bad, it's really it's really not really what you're going through. It's how you're seeing what you're going through.
Correct.
Because the same way when I was growing up, I was just looking at my circumstance negatively. And it really wasn't, you know what I mean? Like literally all I had to do was go to school, do my homework, come home, there was food. I don't have any hungry stories. I don't have any, you know what I mean? Like I don't have abuse. I don't, you know what I mean? I didn't live in an apartment until I had to move out on my own. I always lived in a house, had my own bedroom, your TV in there, you know what I mean? It was just like, so it was like, but you can even take a circumstance like that and interpret it.
Find something, huh?
Find something, yeah, to make you go react, to go do something, right? Yeah. And and I'm thankful to God too that He didn't see fit to let me feel the full result of all my decisions. You know what I mean? Yeah. Because it is true that you can, some people just didn't make it, and some people, So I think the takeaway for me just from this conversation is that you really gotta really be mindful about how you are interpreting what you're viewing.
Absolutely. And
make sure you keep it more of on a positive level, because just from what I hear, you have plenty of reasons to go off the deep end. And even what's even more interesting is that at this stage now, where you have kind of garnered some success, you're doing well, the death of your mother could have made you flip out even worse than maybe even the trauma from being, you know what I mean? And the stakes are a lot higher.
Correct.
Right. The downfall is a lot higher because you're higher. You've elevated. So the downfall, but you still, stay strong and push through. So man, I think that's a beautiful journey, man.
Yeah, it's a like you said, you hit the nail on the head with this one, man. It's it's kind of like what they say, right? It's 10% what happens to you, 90% how you react. Mm-hmm. And if I can give anyone a piece of advice, that's how you have to live life. Just understand that we're all going to go through things.
Yeah.
But 10% is what happens to you. 90% is how you react.
Yeah.
Your reaction will determine the long-term, right, effect of that, circumstance, trauma, whatever. And it's a lot easier said than done.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong. I mean, it definitely is, but that's something that I had to really, really pay attention to now. Like you said, stakes are high. Anything that I go through, I got to make sure that 90% is how I react.
Yeah.
The 10% is what happens to me. You know what I mean?
So I'm kind of pivot from there and just kind of ask a couple of questions, some little hit questions. So what are some things that you haven't accomplished that you want to? Mm-hmm. What are some things that you want to accomplish that you haven't yet?
So I think one thing that I want to accomplish is, I know eventually, maybe in the next 5 or 6 years, we're going to potentially, depends, right? On where the company goes, but, could make a certain push for a sale, things like that, right? And, kind of make those quote unquote big boy moves, right?
Okay. Like selling the business.
I know, or pieces of it and things like that, books and business and stuff like that. I think that's kind of exciting. Those are kind of talks sometimes that we have. It's nothing like clear set in stone, but we've been in the game for a long time and stuff. But I think one of the things I have not accomplished yet is I still feel like that I haven't touched my full potential, and I still think there's so many people out there that need my help, and I think that the phase I'm in finance is going to be the foundation that's just going to create something bigger for me, because you said something earlier that I actually always want to do, and I think I'll travel around the world and I'll speak. Mm-hmm. I think I'll do it globally.
Okay.
I think
we got to take this conversation on the road.
Right?
You know what I
mean? Yeah. Because I just think it all, like I said earlier, I truly believe that everyone's here for a reason, and everyone's got a job from God, right? And you know, why are you so comfortable doing what you're doing now? You know, there's a message that maybe needs to be transcended in just a bigger fashion. This is your starting point.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, obviously I speak on stages and do all that stuff too. And I speak and, you know, at big conferences and stuff. And crazy enough, public speaking was my biggest fear, by the way.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I stutter and all stuff like that. And I have a speech impediment, you know. I was always worried about that. But I do think that that's one thing that I have not accomplished yet is I haven't helped enough people, and I haven't just seeked the freedom that I'm looking for yet, and the freedom not necessarily just on a financial aspect, but a freedom more internally. Because again, I think one thing is that I still have losing my mom has really affected me, and one of my goals is I want to be able to educate people, maybe even on that alone, and how to really process. You know, I was a lone wolf forever, man. Like besides friend stuff, like I there was no plan B for me ever. There was it's you either make this happen or there's nothing.
Yeah,
I mean, and so I guess to answer that question not so vaguely is that, you know, I think there's a lot of people I still need to help. I need to continue, you know, my journey of education, and not just on the financial aspect, but just of life wisdom, things that I learned from other OGs and things like that too, and spread the message. And, you know, I think one thing well, obviously I know I haven't accomplished yet is, I'm not going to lie, I want to personally be a 9-figure person.
Okay.
Until I'm a 9-figure person.
Wait, 9-figure? That's in the 10s or 20s?
At least $100 million person. When my net worth at least
put my fingers up. Wait, hold on.
When my net worth at least hits $100 million, because you know why? Again, I looked at it as a tool, and I'm not scared to say money's one of my things I want to accomplish, because it's a tool. Yeah. And you know what? I never had it when I grew up. I never had that. So if I can teach, if I can get to that level, maybe I can teach others to do it. And they can spread that within the communities, you know what I mean? Because I'm big on that too. Everyone knows me. I'm the most selfless person ever. Yeah. I like to pay for everything, you know what I mean? Even when I didn't have it, you know, I do. That's just the person I am. Yeah. I'm always a firm believer. Money just exposes who you are. If you're a bad person with money, you're just going to be a more worse of a person.
You're going to be a Diddy.
If you're no Diddy. Right? And if you're a good person with money, you'll do better things. Yeah. Right?
That's true. Yeah, man. So, yeah, man, when you hit that 9-figure, you got to come back for another interview. You'll
get a really good birthday gift now.
Yeah, get 100. We're going to do it on the private jet, though. Yeah, we got to do that on the private jet. Right. Man, that's awesome, man. So, okay, well, it's funny because we're leading to money. And the other question I always like to ask, if you had all the money, if money was not a issue for you, what would you be doing right now? I mean, I don't know if the answer is the same, or like just you hit the 9 figures, bam. What does Chris love to do outside of like giving back, and you know what would you do? Yeah.
Well,
maybe some kids, but maybe
family for sure. I definitely want a family. That's okay. I definitely want to get the last name going. So that's something I haven't accomplished yet. Correct. Go back to that. Right. That will happen. I think. I'm a big sports guy.
Okay.
And I would love
to buy the 49ers.
That'd be nice. You know what? I wouldn't mind being like on TV and like speaking like on ESPN, man. If money was not a problem and I could just do something for fun. Okay. I would be a sports analyst.
If Stephen A. Smith is a run for his money.
Run for his money.
Yeah, I think we could get him.
I think we can get him. I really love sports talk. I love the guy talk. You know what I mean? So I would do something in that realm. And that's why I say also like speaking, you know what I mean? And going around, you know, I think that's just something that I love to do. And I'm very passionate with sports. I know
you love that sports talk. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Jordan or LeBron?
So we talked about this in the past.
Now, if you answer this incorrectly,
so I'll give you my honest
You might have to
opinion.
show me what the muscles do, man. You got to get this answer right.
I will say Michael Jordan.
Okay, all right,
and
that's the right answer too.
Michael Jordan for sure is the best wrestler ever. I think LeBron is the best athlete to play the game, but not necessarily the best basketball player.
Okay. All right, I got that. I'll roll with that. And I love LeBron. You know, it's funny because that debate people really get heated about
He's
it.
my favorite player.
Yeah,
You know that too.
Like when I say now I'm gonna get twisted. I'm a Golden State Warriors fan.
Yeah.
I'm the Bay Area, but I love.
You're happy now,
but,
then, right?
Huh?
With Butler, huh?
Yeah, it's cool. I'm glad that Jimmy came. It's a needed addition. I'm more I'm optimistic to see how it's gonna turn out. I'm not, but he's not like a KD. Like when KD came, we was phone calls was going off, and it was big talking like, "Hey, did you see that?" Jimmy Butler. But I mean, I like Jimmy Butler though. I really do. He's a dog. Mm-hmm. He's a dog for sure. And sometimes that's better than skill set and all that. Yeah, he's a dog. Yeah. But I like I love LeBron, and but he's always been like a rival, so I have kind of like that rivalry hate for him, but not like personally or nothing, know. And I love that he's way more a stand up guy, publicly at least, you know what I mean. And I don't like to put people too high on a pedestal, but he's been able to. I don't think we've seen anyone come into that type of success and wealth at his age and maintain it this long without some crazy stories. So, you know what I mean? So like, So what I said, Michael Jordan, LeBron. So we had Mahomes just lose the Super Bowl. So do you think that if he won 3 in a row, he would be in the GOAT conversation? Like over Brady? I think he's in the conversation, but do you put him over Brady had he won? Or even if he wins another one?
So I don't, and this is my philosophy on it. I think he'll be as one of the greats for sure. Mm-hmm. Now, when you look at Tom Brady, the quarterbacks that he had to face during those times, multiple people with rings, right? The skill set in that quarterback level was real quarterback IQ.
Manning,
Peyton Manning, Aaron Rodgers in his prime, all
Drew
these people.
Brees, them was some killers.
And they were in their prime. Eli beat him twice, right? That's still a Manning, right? You know what I mean? People, their IQ, that sport, we know the quarterback position's changed a lot, right? So I just think that he had to deal with a lot more adversity in who he was playing.
Mahomes beat Garoppolo.
You know what I mean? Yeah, exactly, right? And I'm a Niner fan.
I hated Garoppolo.
Or did he beat Purdy and he's a couple years in?
I hated porn star Jimmy, man.
Yeah, man. Porn star Jimmy was worried about porn star stuff. But Mahomes he's a talent, man. He's a talent that, and this kind of goes back to LeBron, right? Is like we're all gonna appreciate him, they appreciate when they're gone. Is what they've done for the game,
right?
You know what I mean? How they've
true ambassador of the game for real.
You know what I mean? Like we've never seen someone as skillful as Brady until Mahomes came in.
You want to know what's interesting enough? Like I love the Warriors. What's crazy is my favorite play is when he blocked Andre Iguodala. Like not in the moment though. But when I go back and look at that play, like that was like some epic, like that was like the catch. That was like the catch by Clark, or that was the Michael Jordan like last shot. Like that has to go. That's the Ali, standing over. When he blocked Iguodala, I like being in the moment to watch it, and it like I was heartbroken. I was pissed. Right? But after the fact, I was like, you just watched one of the greatest plays
of all time
ever.
Yeah,
that was just
and we're only going to be around for so many plays like that. You know what I mean? Like that's the crazy part. That's going back to the greatness. Once he's gone, we don't know if we're going to see things like that again. We don't know. Besides Michael Jordan, whoever came that had that much of a face of the NBA before Jordan, it took how many years? When was Jordan drafted?
It was 84?
80s?
Yeah, 84.
2003. Like 20 years later, where someone even had a remote piece of like a face like that to the NBA from the start like that, So,
So, well, cool, man. Hey, well, thank you for coming.
I appreciate
I appreciate you. Even just you
and
reaching
I'm proud
out.
of you, by the way. This is going to be a great venture for you, man. I can already tell you're built for this kind of stuff. Man.
Thank you, man.
You're
sky's the limit, man. I'm trying to get to those 9. What'd you say, 9? I gotta.
We gotta get 9 figures, man. We gotta do this together, man. Hey, it ain't fun unless everyone's doing it.
No, you said it. You said you got to manifest these things, right? So we gonna manifest this right now. Mm-hmm. We got 9 figures for the both of us.
For the both of us.
And my crew behind the camera.
Everyone get 9 figures today.
Let me get these wine glasses real quick.
Yeah.
Let's pour to this 9 figures.
Yes.
Got a little some Pinot Noir here, and We got some Russian River Valley Pinot.
Mm-hmm.
See, this is what I learned in my. When you get bougie in Napa, you gotta. You know,
Yep. The thumb in the bottom.
the thumb at the bottom. Yeah.
Thank you, sir. And we're on the Napa Valley, so this is one of the best wines around. So.
Sir. Hold that for me, please.
Gotcha.
Thank you. So, let's cheers to this 9 figures. Let's cheers to the Napa Valley. Let's cheers to your success. And let's cheers to all the people who are going to watch this over the years and the months following to come. And we just hope the best. And I hope you guys keep following us and watch us and meet me in Napa.
God bless. Thank
God
you,
bless.
Jeremy.
That's good.
That's good.
Yeah, that's good, man. All right, man. We'll see you next time, man.